welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The maintenance bay of Horizon Dynamics' orbital platform smelled like burnt circuits and stale coffee, a familiar mix that clung to Caleb's work jacket like a bad memory. At 28, he'd spent 5 years elbow-deep in the station's life support systems, patching leaks and recalibrating oxygen filters while the corporate bigwigs upstairs played mad scientist. His hands, calloused and smudged with grease, fumbled with a stubborn pressure valve. The cold bit at his knuckles, and he cursed under his breath, his voice swallowed by the hum of machinery. 3 hours past shift, and I'm still here, he muttered, glancing at the cracked coffee mug on his workbench, its contents long gone cold. His tablet buzzed, lighting up with a new work order. Sublevel 7, Containment Vault Delta. Inspect environmental controls. Priority Alpha. Caleb squinted at the screen, his hazel eyes narrowing. Sublevel 7? He'd been on this rust bucket for years and never heard of it. What kind of bullshit is this? He said to no one, shoving a stray lock of dark hair out of his face. His stomach growled, reminding him he'd skipped lunch, again, to cover for a coworker who'd called in sick. He zipped up his jacket, the frayed cuffs catching on his wrists, and slung his tool bag over his shoulder. The weight tugged at his sore muscles, a souvenir from last night's pickup basketball game with the other techs. Caleb wasn't built like a hero, lean, a little scrappy, with a tendency to slouch when he was tired, but he knew his way around a wrench and a circuit board. That's what kept him employed, even if Horizon Dynamics treated him like a cog in their trillion-dollar machine. The elevator to Sublevel 7 was hidden behind a maintenance panel, its keypad glowing faintly in the dim light. Caleb hesitated, his fingers hovering over the code. This felt off. His clearance was barely high enough to access the main reactor, let alone some secret vault. But the work order came straight from the top, and ignoring it could mean a one-way ticket to the unemployment line, or worse, knowing Horizon's reputation. He punched in his code, half expecting it to fail. The panel chirped, and the doors slid open with a grinding screech that set his teeth on edge. Real inviting, he said, stepping into the elevator. It smelled like rust and old oil, and the lights flickered as it descended, the numbers on the display skipping erratically. Caleb's tablet pinged again. Clearance override granted. Sublevel 7 access approved. He frowned, his gut twisting. Override? Since when do I get that kind of pull? His voice echoed in the cramped space, and he shook his head, trying to shake off the unease. Maybe it was a glitch. Or maybe Horizon was just screwing with him again. The doors opened, and a blast of frigid air hit him, sharper than the maintenance bay. The corridor was a sterile tunnel of polished steel, lit by a faint green glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. No signs, no exit markers, just an endless stretch of metal that felt like it belonged in a sci-fi horror flick. Caleb's boots clomped against the floor, the sound too loud in the silence. He checked his tablet, but the schematics were blank. This place isn't on any map, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. His breath puffed out in small clouds, and he pulled his jacket tighter, wishing he'd grabbed a protein bar before heading down here. He rounded a corner and stopped dead. The corridor opened into a massive chamber, its walls lined with sleek, black panels that shimmered like oil slicks. At the center stood a containment pod, a towering cylinder of reinforced glass that glowed with a soft, eerie blue. The tech was next level: atmospheric seals, biometric scanners, and conduits that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd seen too many alien movies. Caleb's engineering brain kicked into gear, cataloging the setup: high-pressure containment, quantum encryption, and sensors that could probably detect a fly sneezing. This wasn't a life support system. This was something else. Then he saw her. Inside the pod stood a figure, humanoid but not human. Her skin was a deep indigo, flecked with silver that caught the light like stars in a midnight sky. Her hair, or whatever it was a cascade of glowing filaments, like fiber optics swaying in a breeze that didn't exist. She was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, her frame slender but strong, despite the metal cuffs clamping her wrists and ankles. Her eyes, golden and slit-pupilled, locked onto his with an intensity that made his knees wobble. "Holy shit!" Caleb breathed, his tool bag slipping slightly in his grip. He took a step closer, drawn by those eyes, even as every instinct screamed at him to run. The pod's monitors flickered, displaying data in a script he couldn't read, symbols that twisted like they were alive. The air around her seemed to hum, as if her presence was bending the rules of physics. "Help me!" The words hit his mind like a shockwave, clear and desperate, bypassing his ears entirely. Caleb staggered, grabbing a console for balance. "What the hell was that?" he gasped, shaking his head as if he could dislodge the voice. It came again, softer but no less urgent. "They take my light. They cut it from me. Please, human. Free me." His heart hammered in his chest. Telepathy wasn't real, except, apparently it was. Her voice felt like a hand reaching into his thoughts, gentle but pleading, pulling at something deep inside him. He glanced at the pod's control panel, its screen flashing warnings. Containment integrity, 97%. Subject designation Epsilon 9. Status, stable but agitated. Agitated. That word hit him hard. Whatever she was fighting, even locked in that glass cage. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. He felt like an idiot talking to a pod, but those golden eyes were watching him, alive and aware in a way that made his skin prickle. "My name is Vera," her voice answered, resonating in his skull like a half-remembered song. "I am Elthar. The last. They took my world, my kin. Now they take me, piece by piece." Images flooded his mind, flashes of a planet with violet skies and crystal spires, then fire, ships descending, and her people screaming as they were torn apart. The final image was her, strapped to a table, needles piercing her indigo skin while scientists in white coats scribbled notes, their faces blank as stone. Caleb's stomach lurched. He'd heard whispers about Horizon's shadier projects, genetic experiments, alien tech, but he'd always thought they were just stories spacers told over cheap whiskey. Now, standing here, he couldn't deny it. This was real, and it was wrong. "What are they doing to you?" he asked, stepping closer to the pod, his fingers twitching toward the control panel. "They steal the spark in my blood," Vera's voice replied, laced with pain. "It powers their machines, their weapons. I am their battery." Another image hit him, a massive reactor, its core glowing with the same silver flecks as her skin, its output off the charts. Horizon wasn't just experimenting, they were draining her to fuel their empire. Caleb's jaw clenched. He'd signed up to keep people breathing in space, not to help some soulless cork play vampire with an alien. His hand hovered over the biometric scanner, his mind racing. Protocol said to report this, to call it in and walk away. He'd seen what happened to guys who stuck their noses where they didn't belong, fired, blacklisted, or worse. But those golden eyes held him, pleading, fierce, and so damn human despite being anything but. "Screw it," he muttered, pressing his palm against the scanner. To his shock, it flashed green, and the pod hissed, its seals disengaging. "No way that should have worked," he said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. The glass began to retract, sliding upward with a low whine. "They made a mistake." Vera's voice cut in, sharp and urgent. "Your access was not meant to reach me. You are my chance." She stepped forward, her movements slow but graceful, like a dancer recovering from a long injury. Up close, her skin shimmered with faint patterns, like constellations etched in starlight. The cuffs on her wrists left faint scars, and Caleb's chest tightened at the sight. "Thanks, I guess," he said, his voice rough with nerves. "I'm Caleb, by the way. And I'm pretty sure I just tanked my career." Vera's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Caleb," she said aloud, her voice low and melodic, like wind chimes in a storm. "You have given me hope. That is no small thing." Before he could respond, alarms blared, red lights flooding the chamber with a harsh glow. A robotic voice boomed. "Containment breach in sublevel 7, Vault Delta." All personnel, initiate lockdown protocols. Caleb's heart sank. Well, that's our cue to get the hell out of here, he said, grabbing Vera's arm. Her skin was cool, like river stones, but it sent a strange warmth through him, like static that didn't hurt. There's a service conduit, Vera said, pointing to a panel on the far wall. It leads to the upper levels. How do you know that? Caleb asked, already moving to pry open the panel with his multi-tool. I watched, she said simply. Years in their cages. I learned their ways. The conduit was a tight squeeze, a claustrophobic tangle of pipes and wires lit by flickering emergency strips. Caleb crawled ahead, his tool bag banging against his hip, his breath coming in short bursts. Vera followed, her movements eerily silent, her filaments casting a faint glow that lit their path. His tablet buzzed, warning of security drones deploying to Sublevel 7. They're not messing around, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. We need to hit the maintenance hub on Level 3. I can mess with their systems from there. You know their machines, Vera said, her voice echoing in his mind and the conduit at the same time. You are skilled, Caleb. Skilled at not getting fired, maybe, he said, forcing a grin despite the panic clawing at his chest. Let's hope that holds up. They emerged into the maintenance hub, a cluttered maze of consoles, tool racks, and half-disassembled machinery. Caleb slid to a terminal, his fingers shaking as he logged in. I can trigger a fake alarm in the reactor core, he said, more to himself than Vera. It'll pull security away, give us a shot at the hangar. Vera stood by the door, her golden eyes scanning the shadows. They will send hunters, she said, her voice tight. Reavers. Not human, not like me. They track my kind by the spark in our blood. Caleb's hands froze on the keyboard. Reavers? That sounds like something out of a bad vid game. They are worse, she said, her filaments dimming slightly. Constructs of flesh and metal. They do not tire, do not feel. Awesome, Caleb muttered, finishing the hack. The terminal beeped, an alarm screamed across the station, warning of a fake reactor overload. That should keep them busy. Let's move. They darted toward the service elevator, Caleb leading the way with Vera close behind. Her presence was a strange comfort, even as his mind screamed that he'd just thrown his life away. He wasn't a hero, just a guy who'd had enough of Horizon's bullshit. But when he glanced at Vera, her golden eyes steady despite the chaos, he felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just running. He was fighting for something. The elevator doors opened to the hangar, a massive space filled with shuttles and cargo haulers, their hulls gleaming under emergency lights. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that made Caleb's skin crawl. This doesn't feel right, he whispered, pulling Vera behind a stack of crates. Where's the crew? Vera's filaments flared, and she stiffened. Reavers, she said, her voice barely audible. They're here. A low, guttural hum filled the air, like a machine choking on its own gears. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their bodies a nightmare of flesh and metal. Their limbs moved like liquid, stretching and reforming, and their faces, God, they didn't have faces, just smooth, reflective surfaces that twisted the light into grotesque mirrors. Caleb's mouth went dry. What the actual fuck? He whispered, gripping his wrench like it was a lifeline. Those things are alive? Barely, Vera said, her voice trembling but resolute. They want me. They will kill you to get me. Caleb's heart pounded, but he pushed the fear down. He wasn't built for this, but he'd be damned if he let those things take her. Stay close, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. We're getting to that shuttle. Caleb, you can't. Vera started, but he was already moving, sprinting toward a sleek courier shuttle at the far end of the hangar. The Reavers lunged, their limbs stretching impossibly, one slicing through a crate like it was paper. Caleb ducked, swinging his wrench at the nearest one. It connected with a dull thud, staggering the creature but not stopping it. Keep going! He shouted to Vera, who darted past him, her filaments glowing brighter as she reached the shuttle's control panel. To his shock, it lit up under her touch, the ramp lowering with a hiss. How? I learned, she said, her voice sharp with focus. Hurry! They scrambled up the ramp, the reavers closing in. Caleb slammed the control to close the hatch, but a reaver's arm jammed into the gap, bending the metal. Vera grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed it, the chemical cloud making the creature recoil. Caleb swung his wrench, hitting the arm until it withdrew, and the hatch sealed with a thud. He threw himself into the pilot's seat, hands shaking as he powered up the engines. You know how to fly this thing? Vera asked, strapping in beside him. Fixed a few, he said, forcing a grin. Flying's just fixing in reverse, right? The shuttle roared to life, and he punched the throttle, scraping through the hangar doors as more reavers poured in. Alarms screamed, but Caleb didn't look back. The station shrank in the viewport, the planet below a swirling blue-green haze. We made it, he said, his voice hoarse with relief. He glanced at Vera, her golden eyes wide with something like awe. You are reckless, Caleb, she said, her voice soft but warm. And brave. Don't get used to it, he said, checking the sensors. 3 blips appeared, closing fast. We've got company. The Reaver's pursuit craft were black, angular, and bristling with weapons. Caleb's stomach dropped. Those aren't standard, he said. They're built to hunt. They will not stop, Vera said, her filaments dimming. The spark in my blood, it's too valuable. Then we make them work for it, Caleb said, his jaw tight. He punched in coordinates for an asteroid field, a desperate move but their best shot. The shuttle shuddered as he pushed the engines, warning lights flashing. Vera's hand found his, her cool touch steadying him. You risk everything, she said, her voice in his mind and ears at once. Why? Caleb met her gaze, his hazel eyes steady despite the fear. Because you're not a thing. You're you. And nobody deserves that cage. Her filaments flared, and he felt her gratitude, warm and fierce, in his mind. Then we fight together, she said. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic maze of rock and ice. The pursuit craft fired, a pulse grazing the hull. Caleb banked hard, diving into the field, his heart pounding but his hands steady. He'd opened a door he couldn't close, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. The asteroid field was a nightmare of spinning rock and jagged ice, each chunk a potential death sentence as Caleb wrestled with the shuttle's controls. The courier ship groaned, its hull creaking under the strain of evasive maneuvers. Warning lights flashed across the console, screaming about structural stress and an overheating engine. Caleb's hands, slick with sweat, gripped the yoke, his hazel eyes darting between the viewport and the sensor display. 3 Reaver pursuit craft trailed them, their black hulls weaving through the asteroids with unnatural precision. These things don't give up, do they? Caleb muttered, banking hard to avoid a boulder the size of a house. The shuttle shuddered, and a metallic clang echoed from the rear. Debris or a glancing shot, he couldn't tell. Vera sat strapped into the co-pilot's seat, her indigo skin glowing faintly under the cockpit's red emergency lights. Her golden eyes were fixed on the sensors, her filaments swaying like they were sensing something beyond the screens. They cannot, she said, her voice steady but tight. The spark in my blood, it calls to them. Horizon programmed them to hunt it. Caleb shot her a glance, his jaw tight. Then we make sure they don't get it. He punched a sequence into the console, diverting power from life support to the thrusters. The air in the cabin grew thinner, but the shuttle surged forward, weaving through a gap between 2 colliding asteroids. The Reavers followed, one of their energy pulses grazing the hull, sending sparks flying from a nearby panel. Damn it! Caleb hissed, smacking the console to silence a blaring alarm. We can't keep this up. This ship's not built for a dogfight. His mind raced, sifting through years of fixing Horizon's junk for a solution. The asteroid field was their only advantage, chaotic, unpredictable, a place where skill could outmatch raw power. But skill wasn't enough when the enemy didn't make mistakes. Vera's hand brushed his arm, her cool touch grounding him. There's a derelict mining station, 3 degrees starboard, she said, her voice echoing in his mind and ears simultaneously. I saw it in their maps. It's abandoned, but its systems might still function. Caleb raised an eyebrow, impressed despite the chaos. You memorized their maps? What else you got tucked away in there? Her lips curved slightly, a flicker of humor in her golden eyes. Surviving Horizon required observation. Fair enough, Caleb said, adjusting course. The mining station appeared on the sensors, a crumbling hulk of steel and composite buried in the heart of the field. If they could reach it, they might find cover, or a way to lose the Reavers. He pushed the throttle, the engines whining in protest as the shuttle dove through a storm of ice shards. One of the Reaver ships fired again, a pulse slamming into the rear shields. The console screamed, warning of a failing power grid. We're losing shields, Caleb said, his voice tight. If they hit us again, we're toast. Vera unstrapped herself, moving to the engineering panel despite the shuttle's lurching. I can help, she said, her fingers dancing over the controls with a speed that rivaled his own. Your systems are crude, but I understand them. Crude? Caleb snorted, dodging another asteroid. Lady, this is top-of-the-line Horizon tech. Top of the line for humans, she said, her voice teasing despite the stakes. She rerouted power, stabilizing the shields just as another pulse grazed them. The impact rocked the shuttle, but it held. Okay, you're hired, Caleb said, forcing a grin. Now strap him before we hit something. They reached the mining station, its skeletal frame looming like a ghost in the void. Caleb guided the shuttle into a jagged docking bay, the hull scraping against rusted supports. The Reavers followed, their sensors sweeping the structure, but the station's dense metal walls scrambled their readings. For now, they were hidden. Caleb killed the engines, the sudden silence deafening. He slumped back in his seat, wiping sweat from his brow. That was too close, he said, his voice hoarse. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they figure out where we parked. Vera's filaments dimmed, her golden eyes scanning the dark bay through the viewport. This place is old, she said. Abandoned long before Horizon's time. But there is something here. A signal, faint in my mind. Caleb frowned, his engineer's instincts kicking in. A signal? Like what, a distress beacon? Not mechanical, she said, her voice distant. It's alive. Like me. Before he could press her, the shuttle's sensors pinged, detecting movement outside. Caleb's heart sank. Reavers? He asked, already knowing the answer. Vera shook her head. No. Something else. Her filaments flared, and she stood, moving to the hatch. We must investigate. It may be our only chance. Whoa, hold up, Caleb said, grabbing his tool bag. We're not exactly in a tourist-friendly neighborhood. You sure about this? Her golden eyes met his, steady and fierce. You trusted me to get us here, Caleb. Trust me now. He sighed, slinging the bag over his shoulder. Fine, but if we get eaten by space monsters, I'm blaming you. He grabbed a flashlight and a plasma cutter from the shuttle's emergency kit, the closest thing he had to a weapon. They stepped out into the docking bay, the air cold and stale, heavy with the scent of rust and decay. The mining station was a maze of collapsed corridors and broken machinery, its walls scarred by decades of neglect. Caleb's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing graffiti in a dozen languages, spacer tags, warnings, and crude drawings. Looks like this place was a party spot before it went to hell, he said, his voice echoing. Vera moved ahead, her filaments glowing faintly, guiding them deeper into the station. The signal is stronger here, she said, her voice tight with focus. It's calling me. They reached a central chamber, its ceiling half collapsed, exposing a view of the asteroid field through cracked viewports. At the center stood a massive, ancient device, a reactor, its design alien and ornate, unlike anything Horizon built. It pulsed with a faint silver light, the same as the flecks in Vera's skin. Holy shit, Caleb whispered, his engineering brain going into overdrive. That's not human tech. Is that one of yours? Vera approached the reactor, her hand trembling as she touched its surface. Elthar, she said, her voice thick with emotion. This is a remnant of my people. A power core, built to harness the spark. Her golden eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I thought all was lost. But this is a piece of home. Caleb's chest tightened. He'd seen her strength, her defiance, but this was the first time he'd seen her vulnerable, raw. Hey, he said softly, stepping closer. We'll figure this out. Whatever this thing is, it's yours, not Horizon's. Before she could respond, a low hum filled the chamber, and the floor vibrated. Caleb spun, his flashlight catching movement in the shadows. Figures emerged, human, but not quite. They were spacers, their clothes patched and their faces gaunt, but their eyes glowed with the same silver flecks as Vera's skin. One, a wiry woman with a shaved head and a scarred cheek, stepped forward, a makeshift spear in her hand. Who the hell are you? She demanded, her voice rough. And what are you doing with her? Caleb raised his hands, the plasma cutter still in his grip. Easy, lady. I'm Caleb, just a guy trying not to die. This is Vera. We're running from Horizon Dynamics. The woman's eyes narrowed, flicking to Vera. You're Elthar, she said, her tone softening. Like the ones who built this place. She gestured to the others, 5 in total, all with that eerie silver glow in their eyes. We're the remnant. Descendants of workers who found this station decades ago. The spark, it changed us. Vera's filaments flared, her voice trembling. You carried the spark? How? The woman, introducing herself as Mara, lowered her spear. The core, she said, nodding to the reactor. It bonded with us, gave us strength, but it's dying. We've been hiding here, protecting it from Horizon. They'd been sniffing around for years. Caleb's mind raced. Horizon knows about this place? That's why they're after Vera. Her spark's the key to that core, isn't it? Mara nodded grimly. They'll tear this station apart to get it. And us with it. Before Caleb could respond, the station shook, a deafening boom echoing through the chamber. The Reavers had found them. Alarms blared, and Mara's group sprang into action, grabbing weapons, pipes, welders, anything they could wield. They're breaching the outer hull, one of the remnant shouted. Caleb grabbed Vera's arm. We need to move. Can that core thing help us? Vera's eyes locked onto the reactor, her filaments glowing brighter. It can, but it will take all of me. She hesitated, then met his gaze. If I connect to it, I can amplify the spark, disrupt their machines. But it may kill me. No way, Caleb said, his voice firm. We're not losing you. There's gotta be another way. Mara stepped forward, her spear raised. She's right. The core's our only shot. But it needs more than her spark, it needs a conduit. Something to channel the energy. Caleb's engineering brain kicked into gear. You mean like a power relay? I can rig something, but I'll need time. You've got 10 minutes before those Reavers tear through, Mara said. Move. They scrambled to the reactor, Caleb pulling tools from his bag while Vera and the remnant formed a defensive line. He worked frantically, splicing wires and rerouting conduits, his hands shaking but precise. Vera knelt beside him, her cool hand on his shoulder. You're remarkable, Caleb, she said, her voice soft in his mind. You're kind, you build, even in the face of death. Flattery's nice, but save it for when we're not dead, he said, forcing a grin despite the sweat stinging his eyes. He connected the final wire, the reactor humming louder, its silver light intensifying. The station shook again, and a Reaver burst through the chamber's wall, its liquid metal body twisting into a blade-like form. Mara's group fought back, their makeshift weapons barely slowing it. Vera stood, her filaments blazing, and raised her hands. A wave of energy erupted from her, not as strong as Caleb hoped, but enough to stagger the Reaver. Now! She shouted, and Caleb slammed the relay switch. The reactor roared, a pulse of silver light flooding the chamber. The Reaver froze, its body convulsing as the energy disrupted its systems. Outside, the pursuit craft faltered, their sensors scrambled by the core's output. But Vera collapsed, her indigo skin pale, her filaments dim. Caleb caught her, his heart pounding. "Vera, stay with me," he said, his voice cracking. "You did it." Her golden eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. "We did it," she whispered, her hand finding his. Mara approached, her scarred face grim but impressed. "That bought us time, but Horizon's got more ships on the way. You two need to get out of here." Caleb helped Vera to her feet, his arm around her waist. "What about you?" "We'll hold the line," Mara said. "This station's our home. The core's our legacy. We don't run." Vera's voice was faint but firm. "The spark, it belongs to all of us. I will return, Mara. I promise." Caleb led Vera back to the shuttle, the remnant covering their retreat. The docking bay was a war zone, Reaver wreckage scattered among the debris. He strapped Vera into the co-pilot's seat, her breathing shallow but steady. "Hang in there," he said, his voice rough with worry. "We're not done yet." He powered up the shuttle, the engines coughing but holding. The sensors showed the Reaver ships retreating, their systems fried by the core's pulse, but Caleb knew Horizon wouldn't give up. He set a course for a rogue outpost called Haven, a place he'd heard about in Spacer Bars, a sanctuary for those running from core like Horizon. As they cleared the asteroid field, Vera's hand found his again, her touch weak but warm. "You fought for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No one has ever done that." Caleb squeezed her hand, his throat tight. "Yeah, well, you're worth it." He didn't know where the words came from, but they felt true. He'd thrown away his job, his safety, maybe his whole damn life, but looking at her, those golden eyes, that faint spark of hope, he didn't regret a thing. The shuttle limped toward Haven, the stars stretching out before them. But the sensors pinged again, a new blip on the edge of the system. Not Reavers, something bigger. A Horizon warship, its signature unmistakable. Caleb's stomach dropped. "They don't quit, do they?" he muttered. Vera's filaments flickered, her voice steady despite her weakness. "Neither do we." The shuttle's engines whined, a dying animal's cry, as Caleb pushed the battered craft toward Haven, the rogue outpost that promised sanctuary. The cockpit smelled of scorched wiring and sweat, the air thin from a leaking seal. Caleb's hands, knuckles white, gripped the controls, his hazel eyes flicking between the viewport and the sensor display. The Horizon warship loomed behind them, a hulking predator of black steel and glowing cannons, its signature dwarfing the shuttle on the scanners. It was gaining and fast. "Tell me this Haven place is as good as the rumors," Caleb said, his voice rough with exhaustion. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and his utility jacket was torn at the shoulder from their escape through the mining station. Beside him, Vera sat slumped in the co-pilot's seat, her indigo skin pale, her glowing filaments dim after channeling the Althar core's energy. Her golden eyes, though weary, burned with determination. "Haven is a refuge," she said, her melodic voice faint but steady. "A place for those who defy Horizon. If we reach it, we may find allies." Her hand rested on his arm, her cool touch a lifeline in the chaos. "You've brought us this far, Caleb. I trust you." "Yeah, well, don't get too comfortable," he said, forcing a grin despite the knot in his stomach. "We've got a warship breathing down our necks, and this bucket's barely holding together." The sensors screamed, warning of an incoming energy signature. Caleb yanked the yoke, banking hard as a pulse of blue plasma tore past, missing the shuttle by meters. The impact lit up the viewport, illuminating the void. "They're not trying to kill us," Vera said, her voice tight. "They want me alive. My spark, they need it for their reactors." "Then they're gonna be disappointed," Caleb said, his jaw clenched. He scanned the console, searching for a way to buy time. The shuttle was a courier model, built for speed, not combat, and its shields were already flickering at 20%. Haven was still a light minute away, a faint blip on the edge of the system. They'd never make it at this rate. An idea hit him, reckless but possible. "Vera, that core back at the station, when you juiced it up, it fried the Reaver's systems." Can you do something like that again? Not full power, just enough to mess with their sensors. Her filaments flickered, and she winced, her hand pressing against her side where the effort had drained her. It would take much from me, she said. More than I have left. Caleb's heart sank, but he kept his voice steady. You don't have to go all in. Just a spark, enough to give us an edge. We're in this together, right? Her golden eyes met his, and he felt her presence in his mind, a wave of trust, fierce and warm. Together, she said, nodding. She closed her eyes, her filaments glowing faintly as she focused. A low hum filled the cockpit, and Caleb felt a strange pressure in his chest, like static crawling under his skin. The sensors flickered, and the warship's targeting lock wavered, its next shot going wide. Hell yeah, Caleb said, seizing the moment. He diverted all remaining power to the thrusters, the shuttle lurching forward as Haven grew larger in the viewport. The outpost was a patchwork of salvaged hulls and asteroid fragments, hidden in the shadow of a gas giant's rings. It looked like a junkyard, but to Caleb, it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The comms crackled to life, a gruff voice cutting through the static. Unidentified shuttle, you're entering Haven airspace. State your business, or we'll blow you to scrap. Caleb hit the transmit button. This is Caleb Morrow, ex-Horizon Dynamics grunt. I've got an Elthar with me, and a warship on our tail. We're requesting sanctuary. A long pause followed, then the voice returned, warmer but cautious. Horizon, huh? You've got balls bringing them here. Follow the docking beacon. Deviate, and you're dust. Caleb exhaled, guiding the shuttle toward the beacon. The warship fired again, a pulse grazing the hull, and the console screamed about a failing engine. Come on, you piece of junk, he muttered, coaxing the shuttle through the rings. Haven's defenses lit up on the sensors, makeshift turrets and cloaked mines, a ragtag arsenal but enough to make the warship hesitate. They slipped into the outpost's docking bay, the doors slamming shut behind them. The warship held position outside, its weapons hot but not firing, yet. Caleb powered down the shuttle, his hands shaking from adrenaline. We made it, he said, turning to Vera. Her filaments were barely glowing, her breathing shallow. Hey, stay with me, he said, unstrapping and kneeling beside her. We're safe. For now. She managed a faint smile, her golden eyes half-lidded. You are stubborn, Caleb. Like your machines. Damn right, he said, brushing a strand of her filament hair from her face. Her skin was cooler than before, and his chest tightened with worry. Rest. I'll handle the welcome party. The docking bay was a chaotic hive of activity, spacers in patched jumpsuits, aliens with scales and tentacles, all armed and eyeing the shuttle warily. A broad-shouldered man with a gray beard and a plasma rifle approached, flanked by a four-armed alien with iridescent skin. I'm Torrent, the man said, his voice like gravel. This is Crave. You the ones who pissed off Horizon? That's us, Caleb said, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. I'm Caleb. She's Vera. We need help, and fast. Torrent's eyes flicked to Vera, who was leaning against the shuttle, her indigo skin pale. Elthar, he said, his tone softening. Heard stories about your kind. Didn't think any were left. They won't be if Horizon gets her, Caleb said, his voice sharp. That warship out there, it's not here for a friendly chat. Crave's forearms gestured rapidly, their voice a melodic hum through a translator. Horizon's been hunting this system for months. You've brought them to our door. Didn't have a choice, Caleb said, meeting their gaze. She's not a lab rat. And I'm not letting them take her. Torrent studied him, then nodded. Fair enough. Council's meeting now. Bring your friend. They'll want to hear this. Caleb helped Vera walk, her arms slung over his shoulder. Her weight was light, but her steps were unsteady, and he cursed himself for letting her push so hard. The outpost's corridors were a maze of salvaged metal and flickering lights, filled with the chatter of a dozen species. Caleb caught snippets of conversation, traders bartering, engineers arguing over repairs, kids laughing in a language he didn't know. Haven wasn't just a hideout, It was a community, a middle finger to corporations like Horizon. The council chamber was a repurposed cargo hold, dominated by a battered table surrounded by 6 figures, 3 humans, 2 aliens, and a cyborg with a glowing eye. A woman with steel-gray hair and a commanding presence stood as they entered. "I'm Director Lena Voss," she said, her voice crisp. "You've brought a warship to our doorstep. Explain." Caleb recounted their escape, Sublevel 7, the Reavers, the mining station, and the Althar core. Vera added details when she could, her voice weak but clear, describing Horizon's experiments and the spark in her blood. The council listened, their expressions ranging from skepticism to grim understanding. "Your spark," said the cyborg, his eye whirring as it focused on Vera. "Horizon's reactors. Our intel says they're failing without a stable energy source. You're it, aren't you?" Vera nodded, her filaments flickering. "My people powered their worlds with the spark. Horizon stole it, destroyed us. I am the last." "Not the last," said a scaled alien with a deep, rumbling voice. "We've intercepted data from Horizon's network. They have a vault, a genetic archive with Althar DNA. If we could get it, we could rebuild your kind." Caleb's heart skipped. "You're saying there's a chance to bring her people back?" Voss nodded. "But it's locked in Horizon's primary data fortress, orbiting Proxima Centauri. Impenetrable unless—" She trailed off, her eyes flicking to Caleb. "You were one of their engineers. You know their systems." Caleb swallowed hard. "Yeah, but I'm a grunt, not a hacker. And that warship out there isn't exactly waiting for an invitation. We have a plan," Voss said. "Haven's been gathering evidence against Horizon for years. Experiments, abductions, war crimes. But we need a key to their data vault to make it stick. Your friend's spark could disrupt their defenses long enough for a team to infiltrate." Vera straightened, her golden eyes blazing despite her weakness. "I will do it. For my people. For all they've taken." "No," Caleb said, his voice sharper than he intended. "You're barely standing. You push that spark again, it could kill you." She turned to him, her hand finding his. "Caleb, you freed me. You showed me what it means to fight for something. I cannot stop now." He wanted to argue, but her eyes held him, fierce, resolute, and so damn alive. "Fine," he said, his voice rough. "But I'm going with you. No way I'm letting you face that alone." Voss outlined the plan. A small team, Vera, Caleb, Torin, and Crave, would infiltrate the data fortress using a stolen Horizon shuttle. Vera's spark would disrupt the fortress's security, allowing them to access the vault and broadcast Horizon's crimes to the United Earth Alliance. Haven's defenses would hold off the warship, buying them time. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. Back in their quarters, a cramped room with a single cot and a viewport overlooking Haven's chaotic docks, Caleb sat beside Vera, watching her sip a nutrient-packed Torin had provided. Her color was returning, but her filaments were still dim. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice low. "We can find another way." She shook her head, her golden eyes soft but firm. "My people are gone because I was not enough. This is my chance to make it right." She paused, her hand resting on his. "You've given me more than freedom, Caleb. You've given me purpose." He felt a lump in his throat, her touch sending that familiar warmth through him. "Yeah, well, you're giving me a heart attack," he said, managing a crooked smile. "Just promise you'll come back from this." She leaned closer, her filaments brushing his cheek, her scent like ozone and starlight. "With you, I believe I can." Their lips met, a brief, electric moment that drowned out the alarms and the warship outside. It wasn't just attraction, it was trust forged in fire. The mission launched at dawn, Haven's time. The stolen shuttle, disguised with forged credentials, approached the data fortress, a gleaming orb of steel and glass orbiting Proxima Centauri. Caleb, in a borrowed maintenance uniform, felt like an imposter, his heart pounding as they docked. Vera, her indigo skin hidden under a cloak, stayed close, her presence a steady anchor. Torin and Crave, armed with stun rifles, flanked them, their faces grim. The fortress's corridors were a sterile labyrinth, patrolled by drones and guards in Horizon's sleek uniforms. Caleb's forged ID got them through the first checkpoint, but his palms were sweaty, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. "Stay cool," Torin whispered, his beard twitching with a suppressed grin. "You look like you're about to puke." "First time breaking into a death trap," Caleb shot back, his voice low. "What's your excuse?" Crave's forearms gestured rapidly, their translator humming. "Focus. The vault's on level 9. We need Vera's spark to disable the locks." They reached the vault's entrance, a massive door guarded by 2 reavers. Caleb's stomach dropped, but Vera stepped forward, her filaments glowing. "I can handle them," she said, her voice steady. Before he could protest, she raised her hands, and a wave of energy pulsed from her, weaker than at the mining station but enough to make the reavers twitch, their systems glitching. Caleb seized the moment, hacking the door's panel with a portable drive Crave had provided. The locks disengaged with a hiss, and they slipped inside, the reavers still recovering. The vault was a cavern of glowing data cores, each humming with Horizon's secrets. At its center stood a sealed chamber, its walls etched with Elthar symbols. Vera gasped, her hand trembling as she touched the chamber. "My people's legacy," she whispered. "Their DNA, their memories." Caleb worked the terminal, downloading the data while Torin and Crave stood guard. "Got it," he said, the drive beeping as it filled. "We broadcast this, and Horizon's done." Alarms blared, and the vault shook. The warship had breached Haven's defenses, its drones flooding the fortress. Torin fired his stun rifle, downing a drone, but more poured in. "We're out of time," he shouted. Vera's filaments flared, and she turned to Caleb. "I can amplify the spark one last time. It will destroy the fortress's systems, give us a chance to escape." "No," Caleb said, grabbing her arm. "You'll die." Her golden eyes held his, steady and unafraid. "If I don't, we all die. Trust me, Caleb." He wanted to scream, to drag her out of there, but he saw the truth in her eyes. "Okay," he said, his voice breaking. "But you come back to me." She nodded, stepping into the chamber. Her filaments blazed, and a wave of silver light erupted, surging through the fortress's systems. Drones fell, lights flickered, and the vault's cores sparked and died. Vera collapsed, her body limp, and Caleb caught her, his heart in his throat. "Move!" Torin shouted, dragging them toward the shuttle as the fortress began to implode, its structure buckling under the spark's overload. They piled in, Crave taking the controls as Caleb cradled Vera, her breathing faint but there. The shuttle rocketed out, debris trailing in their wake, as the fortress exploded in a silent bloom of light. Haven's defenses held off the warship just long enough for the shuttle to escape, the broadcasted data flooding Alliance networks. Horizon's crimes, genocide, experiments, slavery, were laid bare, their empire crumbling as the truth spread. 6 months later, Caleb stood on a terraformed moon, its skies streaked with violet auroras, a new home for the Elthar. Vera, now stronger, her filaments glowing brightly, stood beside him, her hand in his. The Alliance had seized Horizon's assets, and their geneticists were using the Vault's data to revive the Elthar, with Vera as their guide. "It's over," Caleb said, watching the auroras dance. "We did it." "Not over," Vera said, her voice warm. "Beginning." She turned to him, her golden eyes shining. "You showed me what humanity can be, Caleb. Compassion, courage. You changed everything." He grinned, squeezing her hand. "Yeah, well, you're not so bad yourself." As they kissed under the alien sky, Caleb knew that opening that vault door had been more than an act of defiance. It was the spark of a new future, one where humanity's greatest strength, its heart, lit the way.